On this Apple Watch Series 4, we're going to be replacing the Digitizer. As you can see here in the LCD, the top corner there, it was damaged. It was hit fairly hard, as you can see there in the picture. And also the touch screen, the Digitizer, has had some issues. As you can see, it's zooming in and not following my finger correctly. In fact, it's doing basically the opposite of what I'm asking it to do. Now, if you're wondering how we got to this point, not necessarily on this one, but on I've shown in another video exactly how to replace the glass on the Series 4. This is a 44mm as well. So take a look at that video if you haven't seen it already. One of the reasons I'm having so much trouble is because also here in the top corner right there, you can see the force touch sensor was also damaged from that impact. Now you might be wondering why we're still going to fix this even though the display is damaged. That's because they currently are around $300 just for the part. So we're going to go ahead and refurbish this one. Let's get started. Alright, the first thing that we need to do is disconnect the display. So here with my thin tweezers, I'm going to carefully find the best way to disconnect each one of these connectors. We'll gently get in there and flip up the little latches that hold these connectors down. Make sure you don't apply too much pressure on the display. They are very thin. Then we'll go ahead and pull straight back on the connectors, making sure we don't pull up and break them. Alright, so we're about to start removing the Digitizer. So this is what you'll need if you're wanting to do this yourself. I would highly not recommend it if you haven't done one before. You need the glass piece with the Digitizer. These are fairly expensive, but less expensive than a new screen. We're going to go ahead and pull back the heatsink sticker here. This side's already started to lift, so we'll go ahead and pull on that there. Gently pull back, try not to tear it as you do this. If you tear it, it's not the end of the world. The next thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of alcohol. This is isopropyl alcohol, 99%. We'll go ahead and stick it under the edge there. This will help loosen the adhesive that's holding down this flex cable. And then it'll come up. And I'll go ahead and smear around the alcohol so that it dries a little faster. Alright, there we go. Now we can get to separating the Digitizer from the display. Here I'm using my heat plate. I have isolated the 9 suction holes here on the corner so that we can have a maximum suction from the heat plate and the vacuum. Next thing we're going to do is take my wire. This is 0.04 millimeter aluminum wire. That'll help us separate the Digitizer from the display. This is very tricky. It's hard to do. You can cut the polarizer. If you happen to cut the polarizer, the display is basically done. There is no going back from that. So make sure that you get in between the Digitizer and the polarizer to do this. As I carefully move through, I just want to verify that we are in the right spot. So I'll flip it over and I can see that yes, I haven't cut into the polarizer, so I'm going to continue to go with the wire down the side of the display on either side, making sure that I'm not putting too much pressure in either way. Now this video is sped up. The entire video is actually sped up quite a bit because this is a fairly long process. So if you think that it's going this fast, it really is not. But otherwise this would be a really boring video, and I'd rather not have you sit there and watch me cut through a piece of glass like this for 5 minutes, or cut the Digitizer off for like 5 minutes. So we'll go ahead and speed it up a little bit. Now as you'll see, this is the adhesive that holds the Digitizer to the display is super sticky. So I'll have to cut multiple times to release it from the Digitizer. This makes it very tricky also with the suction. because it'll lose suction here or there and move around like that. But we'll finally get it off. Now I was lucky on this to get the majority of the adhesive off in one go. As you will see, I'm left with, I'd say, maybe 30% of the adhesive left on the display. The rest was left on the digitizer there. Here's a fun little look at the digitizer. You can see how flexible these little things are. It's amazing the technology these days. That is the touch screen. I can't believe it's all integrated right into that right there. Next thing we'll do is I'll go ahead and take my finger and rub the adhesive off, as long as you're gentle, and take your time. Remember, this is sped up. This part, take your time. A lot of people have issues at this point. They just get frustrated with the adhesive being so stuck on there, and they push too hard and they ruin the display. Again, I'm going to reiterate something. This repair is not something that I'd recommend if you haven't had prior experience. This is very difficult. I would say it rivals refurbishing an iPhone X screen. And so if you've successfully done an iPhone X screen, you'll be able to do this, I believe. Anyway, gently continue to rub off the adhesive until you get the majority of it. Oh, and by the way, if you'd like to see how an iPhone X screen is refurbished, basically in the same process, you can check out that video on my channel. So here I'm going to take a cleaner wipe and some acetone and put it on the end of my finger and go ahead and start rubbing. You can see how it eats away at the residue left from the adhesive fairly nicely and leaves it very clean. So we'll go ahead and rub around the entire display, removing all the adhesive and leaving ourselves with a shiny, beautiful looking display. Do this gently, of course. I'm taking extra caution to make sure I don't put any pressure in any place too much on the display, making those circular motions, allowing the adhesive to release itself as I pass over it with the cloth and with the acetone. In those more stubborn areas, you're of course going to want to use your finger, but be gentle as well as you do this. Now I'm keeping in mind this entire time that top right corner there on the lower end of the screen has that dead pixel spot, and so I'm making sure I'm not getting anywhere near it with any of the pressure that I'm applying, because I don't want to further the damage that is there on the display. Alright, we'll go ahead and clean up the rest of the residue there from the adhesive. And let's clean up all of the rest of it, making it look nice and pretty. I'm pretty meticulous about this, a little maybe obsessed with trying to make it perfect. Nice and shiny. Go ahead and clean up my work desk there. Well, let's go ahead and connect it again. Now this is a part where you have to be extremely careful. You can see how thin this display is, super thin. It has a little bit of flex to it, but easily damaged. So take your time in doing this. And one of the reasons I am going to test it now is because after installing the digitizer, it's going to be much more difficult to get it off without ruining it. And seeing as the digitizer is fairly expensive, I'd rather not potentially waste that part in putting it on a display that I've damaged. So at this point, it's pretty crucial to test out the display and make sure it's still working. Now, of course, we'll still have the one spot if it's successful up there in the top corner. But that's not a big deal, because I don't believe that it's going to spread more, seeing as it's been that way for quite some time. And I haven't seen those spread like on other displays when they are damaged like that. So And there we go. There's the Apple symbol. Looks like it's successful so far. Let's go ahead and make sure that that didn't spread anymore, and it's just the very top of the display there still. There we go. Just like it was before. Obviously there's no touch on the screen, so we won't be able to turn it off, but that's okay. Not a big deal. We'll go ahead and disconnect the display again. And gently pull those connectors out, being sure not to hurt the display in the process. Alright, now I have this little stand that's going to help prop up the display so that I have an easier access to it as we put the digitizer on it. There's the old digitizer there. Here's a fun little clip where you can see all three pieces, the old digitizer, the display, and the new digitizer. Now I'm going to be adhering this using LOCA, that's liquid optical clear adhesive. It's a UV activated adhesive that'll solidify as we hit it with the UV light. We'll go ahead and clean off the fingerprints there and the last few dust specks that remain. And we'll go ahead and put a little bit of the LOCA on the display. A little drop like that. Now gently take the new digitizer, making sure that it is clean from dust, and we'll gently center it over the display and slowly lower it until it touches. We want it to touch only in one spot so that we don't get any bubbles. And we'll let the display naturally adhere with the LOCA there. On the back, I'm going to turn it over and adjust the display, try to center it, eyeball it a little bit, make sure it's as centered as possible. And one other thing, you want to make sure that the flex cable is on the correct side, because if you happen to flip this around, you won't have a touch screen. You'll have to take it apart, and that's fairly tricky. Alright, we'll let this naturally spread out to the sides. I like to do this because when it naturally seals, instead of me forcing it, I don't risk getting bubbles in the display, either now or in the future. So I let it naturally go out to all four corners so that it's bubble free and beautiful. Looks like it's finished there. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, and we'll check out and make sure it's nice and centered there. We'll make any little adjustments, tweaks that we want to make sure that it is centered both vertically and horizontally. I'll tap it here or there gently, moving it up and down, left or right, whichever way it needs to go. I have a little bit of the LOCA that's come through the digitizer over there by the flex cable, and I'm actually going to use it to my advantage by hitting it with the UV light. This will solidify, basically holding onto the display, making sure it stays in the right spot when I flip it over and hit it with the UV light. I love the way that these displays pick up the light and they illuminate when you hit it with the UV light. It's pretty awesome. Fairly bright light there, sorry to blind you. And we'll go ahead and leave it here for a few minutes, making sure that we hit it with the UV light nice and long, solidifying it. Now this is a fairly potent UV light, so it does the job fairly quickly. Alright, after a few minutes, we'll go ahead and flip it over, and any of the UV, the LOCA that's kind of slid around the edges, we're gonna make sure it's also solidified. There's a couple little spots where it's starting to creep out, but we'll go ahead and hit it with the light, make sure that it's nice and activated so that it doesn't continue to move. Next thing we'll do is peel off the sticker that's protecting the adhesive that'll hold the flex cable down. And we'll go ahead and stick it down and line it up with the other flex cables and put back the heatsink sticker across the plates there on the back of the display. And we'll rub down the sticker so that it has good adhesion. Alright, and that's how you replace the digitizer and glass on an Apple Watch Series 4. This is the 44mm, but it's the same on the 40mm display. The next thing we're going to do is test it and make sure it works. So, being gentle, yet not as gentle as we had to be before, because now we have the glass to support it. We'll go ahead and slide the connector. The connector's all in, and click the latches down. Now this is part one of a two-part series. The second part I'll probably be releasing the following day, showing how to replace the Force Touch sensor on the Series 4 as well. Let's go ahead and test it out. Oh, looks like the touch isn't working. Oh no. Just kidding. Let's go ahead and give it a little restart. Like almost all Apple devices, anytime there is an issue, go ahead and just restart it. And is it gonna work? Yes. The touch is back and it's responsive. It's following my commands. There we go, zooming in and out with the dial. Looks good. If you want to watch the other video, feel free to hopefully click that link when available. Please subscribe if you haven't. Like the video, comment, share below. If there's anything you want to see that I haven't done yet, go ahead and put a request and I'll see what I can do to make that happen for you. Thanks for watching.